Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Fallout 4 Mods Weekly. We are finally back on a weekly schedule, and this week we've got a lot of really cool mods to check out, including some beautiful new weapons and an awesome brand new set of power armor, a type of mod that I know you guys particularly enjoy. As always, if you want to try any of the mods featured in this video, they will all be linked down in the description below, along with any Xbox links if there are any available. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started by jumping in with the first mod this week, which is the T-47R Power Armor by pinedog. This is going to be two brand new sets of power armor added into Fallout 4, one of which being the primary set, the T-47R Power Armor, but there is also a unique set of power armor hidden in this mod with its own unique aesthetics that are completely different from the T-47. Now, the T-47R Power Armor is going to function much like any other set of power armor. It comes with its own unique pieces, different arms, legs, a chest piece, and of course a helmet. This has a very lore-friendly design that I enjoy quite a lot. It's reminiscent of the T-45 armor to an extent, but it functions more like the T-51 in terms of stats. One thing this armor does bring to the table, though, is some new attachments over at the Power Armor Station that no other armors in the game have. This is going to include cryo packs, a built-on backpack, and even a terminal. I can't really gather what the terminal does, but it is there for an aesthetic option, which is pretty neat. There's even a completely redesigned jetpack for this power armor, unlike the ones in the vanilla game, and I have to say, I really like the design of the one included in this mod. There's also a ton of paint jobs over at the Power Armor Station and even some decals you can throw on as well. And the decals are separate from the paint, so you can mix and match them as you please. If you want a green military paint job with a Minutemen decal, you can do that, which is pretty neat. Another interesting feature of customization is the glowing lights added to the arms of this power armor, which is separate from the glowing eyes attached to your headlamp. So you can actually change those colors to either match or be completely different, which is kind of neat. Keep in mind, though, the glowing lights on the arms are always on. You can't actually turn those off, so that's kind of important to note. Now, if you want to get your hands on this power armor, there is one set that can be found over at Fort Hagen, but there's also, like I mentioned before, a unique set of power armor in this mod. The quantum power armor that's included in this mod is actually going to be sort of a scavenger hunt. If you head over to Valentine's Detective Agency, you can find a set of riddles that will allow you to find each of the pieces at separate locations. Once you have them all, you can put them together on a set of power armor, and you'll get the really cool looking quantum power armor with its own unique set of glowing features and a completely redesigned helmet that looks awesome. Altogether, this makes for a perfect set of lore-friendly power armor. Awesome for anybody who actually uses power armor in this game, or even for those of you who don't, as a pretty cool decoration to keep around your settlement. Awesome stuff from pinedog. Can't wait to see what you do next. Now, up next, we've got the first of our weapon mods this week, and that is the Heavy Soviet Shotgun, or as you may know it, the KS-23 by Pig and Millennia. That's right, Pig has been on a roll as of late, porting over some of the Millennia and Another Millennia team's assets from Fallout New Vegas, and now we have the KS-23, a shotgun that has actually been requested quite a lot in the modding scene. So now we finally have one, and it is very high quality, featuring, of course, Millennia's beautiful custom assets, as well as some other assets made by myself and the Another Millennia team, and it even has custom animations, perfect for this pump-action shotgun. Now, it is going to require bullet-counted reload, as that is built into this weapon, so you can actually reload the correct amount of shells that you fired rather than reloading all of them at once like the vanilla lever action. Additionally, there are two different versions of this mod. The main version, which does require munitions, though I promise this is definitely the way to go, as this allows you to have different ammo types, including some small grenade launcher rounds, which is just awesome in this weapon. Or, of course, you can download a non-munitions version, but that's just going to limit you to the regular old shotgun rounds, and you'll be missing out on a lot of customization available with the full version. It definitely seems like the tides are changing in regards to people's opinion on munitions, as this is the first mod I've seen in a while to have more munitions-based downloads than the non-munitions version, so it just goes to show that it really is a wonderful mod to have in tandem with all of these really cool weapon mods. If you want to get your hands on this wonderful new shotgun, it is injected to the level list and can be found on enemies after level 10, or you can find a unique version hidden over at the Mass Fusion Containment Shed. Really quick, let's go ahead and get a look at the KS-23's custom animations and sounds, as they look absolutely fantastic on this weapon. Now, speaking of lore-friendly weapons, we have another addition known as the Industrial Electromagnetic Driver by the Sixth Messenger and Micalov. This is essentially an industrial anti-materiel Gauss rifle. This is a very, very heavy weapon with a very unique aesthetic, one that looks particularly Fallout. Now, what's really cool about this weapon is that it's actually a crank design using the laser musket animations to allow you to get some pretty heavy shots the more you crank this weapon. And of course, you can modify that over at the weapons workbench to change the amount of cranks you're allowed to throw onto this thing. But what's really cool with this weapon is the more you crank it, obviously the more damage it does, but also the heavier the recoil is. Something I didn't know you could actually script onto a weapon, which is pretty cool. So the more you crank this thing, it will actually have incredible kickback, causing your screen to shake more and more the more you crank this thing. And it even affects you in third person. You'll see your character recoil back if you fire this thing with, say, 3 or more cranks. That is just such a cool, unique design for a weapon, and I have to say I like it a lot. There's actually a trade-off for all of that damage, which is a massive amount of recoil that will literally stun you in place for a little bit. It's kind of neat. Additionally, there's a ton of customization over at the weapons workbench, including ways to massively change how this weapon functions. Typically, you'll see this in sort of a sniper rifle format, allowing you to throw on a big scope and fire huge Gauss projectiles at range, but there's also a shotgun attachment, allowing you to fire multiple projectiles at once for insane amounts of damage. That's right, a crank industrial anti-materiel Gauss shotgun. Quite a Fallout weapon, in my opinion. If you want to get your hands on this thing, it actually is added to the level list specifically for the Rust Devils, which means this does require the Automatron DLC. On top of that, there's even 2 legendaries hidden around the world. One is Velocitas Erratico, and the other is the Final Hour. As usual, this is awesome work by Micalov and the Sixth Messenger, and this makes for an amazing lore-friendly addition to any load order. So go ahead and try this one out. It's a whole lot of fun. Now, up next, we have a wonderful new mod known as the Miscellaneous Melee Pack by Micalov. The second time Micalov is showing up in today's video, but for good reason. This is an awesome pack of new melee weapons that I quite enjoy. It's going to basically fill a void left by Fallout 4's weapons sandbox, adding a ton of weapons you should expect to see all around the Commonwealth, but for whatever reason weren't there in the vanilla game. This mod adds 6 new weapons in total, adding a new saber, a meat cleaver, a kitchen knife, a Bowie knife, an axe, and a hatchet. All of these are very, very commonplace besides maybe the saber, but the saber actually does make sense since we do see some Revolutionary era swords in the base game, so having a saber like this is a pretty cool addition. All of these do have attachments over at the weapons workbench, though they are relatively limited, offering usually a serrated option and some kind of an electrical stun pack. And I believe the Bowie knife has an option to throw on a Deathclaw blade, which is pretty cool and fitting for a hunting knife. All of these weapons are added to the level list and will be found on similar weapons. So knives will spawn with other vanilla knives, and swords will spawn with vanilla swords. The big heavy axe will spawn around areas where you would find the sledgehammers, so most of these should be pretty fitting on the enemies you should find them on. I have to say, I adore little mods like this that just fill in those weird gaps and voids in the base game to make the world feel more alive and realistic, and this mod definitely does exactly that. So I have to say, excellent work by Micalov. This is a wonderful little melee pack that is probably going to have a permanent spot in my load order. Now, the next mod is an interesting one. This mod is known as Things MP5 by Thing. Now, this is a pretty interesting take on the MP5. The idea is that it has been a heavily modified version made out of mostly handmade parts with a few pre-war MP5 parts, and the idea was that it was supposed to be a very Fallout-y design for the weapon. And in that regard, I very much like this mod. But there are a few elephants in the room when we talk about this thing that I do need to address before you download it. Usually whenever I show off a mod, it's because I highly recommend it, but this time around there are quite a few caveats to this weapon that make it not perfect. My goal is to be as transparent as possible and show these mods to you unbiased, and this mod has a handful of issues that I do need to address before you decide to download this thing. But first, let's talk about the parts I like. The overall model for this thing is absolutely wonderful. I love the idea of having a scrappy handmade style of a real-world weapon. It fits Fallout 4's aesthetic very well. The design methodology for all of this is pretty dang good. But when it comes to the actual model quality, there are a few issues. The textures for the most part are pretty nice, but the model itself is very low poly in areas that it should be high poly, especially on the receiver and the sights. Speaking of sights, the base iron sights are actually greatly misaligned, and I feel like that's something that could have been easily addressed. Additionally, there are some blatant clipping issues, not only while you're just holding the weapon, but especially while you reload. The regular magazine actually reloads perfectly and it fits the animations wonderfully, but the drum magazine doesn't actually have its own animation, so your hand phases through it right in front of your face on the screen, and that's something that is just so immersion breaking that I feel like people would have a lot of issues with, so I wanted to mention it here before you download it and found it out for yourself. The main reason I wanted to show off this mod today is because it has a lot of potential. The design on this thing is absolutely incredible, and the thing seems to have some pretty good post-apocalyptic weapon design ideas, but the execution just needs a teensy bit of work, some polish, and this mod could be an excellent addition to just about anybody's load order, but there are some small issues that should be fixed. If you're fine with these issues and you can look over them, that's perfectly fine. Add this to your load order and that's wonderful. But if these are something you can't look over, I did want to mention them as it is something you need to know whenever you watch this video. Whether or not you want to download this mod, it does have a few issues, but if you can look past those, it's a pretty cool weapon, and again, I really like the idea behind this thing. It looks super, super cool from a distance. It's only when you start putting it under the magnifying glass that you really start to see some of its issues. Aside from the modeling and the bugs and the other things like that, there are also some issues with the balancing. Whenever I took this thing over to a weapons workbench, the balancing on the receivers is pretty crazy, offering a total of 134 damage for the standard receiver in semi-automatic. No perks, no modifications. That is insanely unbalanced. It is way too OP. Again, without upgrades or perks. Additionally, a lot of the receivers seem to be out of order, including some automatic versions not being automatic. Again, some polish needs to be addressed here. But if these issues could be fixed, this would make an excellent new lore-friendly addition to the game. So again, I wanted to show this off because the design and the idea here is incredible. It just needs a little bit of work to get to its full potential. If you do decide to download this though, it does come with custom animations like I said. These are coming from War Daddy's MP5 mod, and it is even added to the level list and will start spawning out in the world after level 10 on your most common enemies like Gunners, Raiders, and the Minutemen. There's even a separate version for the Diamond City security that has its own Diamond City skin on it, which is pretty cool. Before we move on, let's go ahead and show off the custom animations for this MP5 to see what you think of those, and then we'll move on to the last mod of this week. Now, the last mod that we are checking out is the OTS-14 Groza by SpongeBob Slavic Pants. For those who are unaware, the Groza or Groza is a bullpup version of an AK that has some pretty interesting aesthetics. It's a mod that people have been asking for Fallout 4 for quite a time, and I believe the only versions that had existed thus far were not available on the Nexus. But now we have one that is Nexus ready. And this thing is really cool. It comes complete with beautiful custom animations and wonderful sound design, and of course a very, very nice model of the weapon. I will say the textures are a bit clean for my taste, but they don't look bad at all. It just doesn't look like something that's been surviving in a wasteland. As most modern weapon mods go, this thing has a ton of customization over at the weapons workbench, including a ton of different grips, magazines, ammo rechambers, scopes, tactical attachments, and even a functional grenade launcher, which is pretty cool. This mod does come with built-in scripted level list injection, so it is added to enemies around the Commonwealth. And there's also a ton of optional files, including a patch to add compatibility for armaments, the fake through scope mod, and even the tactical reload mod. Altogether, this makes for a pretty complete weapon. The only thing it is missing is custom animations for power armor in third person, which isn't the biggest deal in the world as you're not really going to see the weapon in front of you behind all that power armor anyways. But the author does state that they may get around to adding it in the future, but it's just not guaranteed. Altogether, this is a wonderful representation of the Groza, and I have to say I like this weapon a lot, so having a mod for it in Fallout 4 is a very nice addition to the Nexus modding scene. So yeah, guys, that pretty much wraps up a lot of the big releases that came out this week for Fallout 4. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found at least one new mod to throw into your load order. Again, all of these are linked down in the description, so go ahead and check that out. And while you're down there, consider dropping a rating if you enjoyed the video. It really helps out the channel, and even consider subscribing if you haven't already for more videos just like this. As always, a big shout out to all of my patrons for supporting every single video, and a very special thank you to Backbone Danny, Freedom, Glasma, Damien, Indecisive Wolf, Logan Rigmaiden, Lord Toast, Microhan, Moonlit Gamer, Oscar, Scott, Sterling, Tibbin76, Youth RC, and Voider for joining that Tier 3 Patreon membership. If you'd like to support the channel over on Patreon, you can do so using the link down in the description, but it is completely optional. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Peace!